the chapel was too quiet. The kind of quiet that made the air feel heavy, like it was pressing down on her chest. Evelyn stood at the altar, her fingers twisting the delicate lace of her veil. She hadn't expected this moment to feel so real. The candles flickered, casting long shadows across the stone floor, and the faint scent of incense lingered in the air. It was supposed to be a farce, a calculated move, a means to an end. But now, standing here, she couldn't shake the weight of what she was about to do. "You look," his voice broke the silence, low and steady, but with a hint of something she couldn't quite place. She turned to face him, her heart pounding in her chest. Liam. He looked every bit the part of the groom, his dark suit tailored to perfection, his hair slightly tousled, as if he'd run his hands through it one too many times. His eyes, though, those piercing blue eyes, held hers with an intensity that made her stomach twist. "I look what?" she asked, her voice softer than she intended. She hadn't meant to sound so vulnerable, but the words slipped out before she could stop them. He stepped closer, his gaze never leaving hers. "You look like you're about to bolt." There was a faint smirk playing at the corner of his lips, but his tone was serious. "Second thoughts?" She forced a laugh, though it sounded hollow even to her own ears. "No. No second thoughts." Liar. The word echoed in her mind, but she pushed it aside. This wasn't about feelings. This was about revenge. About making him pay for what he'd done. And Liam? He was just a pawn in her game. A means to an end. Nothing more. But then he reached out, his fingers brushing against hers as he took her hand. His touch was warm, grounding, and for a moment, she forgot to breathe. "Evelyn," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "If you're not sure." "I'm sure," she interrupted, her voice firmer this time. She couldn't let him see the doubt creeping in. Couldn't let him know how much this was affecting her. She straightened her shoulders, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "Let's just get this over with." He studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he nodded, releasing her hand and stepping back. "All right. If that's what you want." The ceremony passed in a blur. The priest's words seemed distant, muffled, as if she were hearing them from underwater. She repeated the vows mechanically, her voice steady even as her mind raced. "This is for you, Daniel." The thought was bitter, but it gave her strength. Her ex had destroyed her, humiliated her, left her broken and alone. And now? Now she would destroy him. Piece by piece. Starting with his family. When it was over, Liam leaned in to kiss her. It was brief, almost chaste, but it sent a shiver down her spine all the same. His lips were soft, warm, and for a split second, she forgot why she was there. Forgot everything except the way he made her feel. But then he pulled away, and the reality of what she'd done came crashing back. They stepped out of the chapel into the cool evening air. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It should have felt romantic, but all Evelyn felt was a gnawing sense of unease. She glanced at Liam, who was watching her with that same unreadable expression. "So," he said after a moment, his tone light but with an edge she couldn't quite place. "What now?" She hesitated, her mind racing. What now indeed? She hadn't thought much beyond this moment. Beyond the wedding. Beyond the revenge. But now that it was done, she wasn't sure what came next. "I guess we go home," she said finally, her voice tentative. He raised an eyebrow, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Our home?" Her stomach twisted at the thought. Their home. The idea was both terrifying and, strangely appealing. But she couldn't let herself think like that. Couldn't let herself forget why she was here. "Yes," she said, forcing a smile. "Our home." He nodded, his expression softening slightly. "All right then. Let's go." They walked to the car in silence, the tension between them palpable. Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking into something far more complicated than she'd anticipated. But it was too late to turn back now. She'd made her choice. As they drove through the winding streets, she stole glances at him out of the corner of her eye. He was focused on the road, his hand steady on the wheel, but there was a tension in his jaw that hadn't been there before. She wondered what he was thinking. If he regretted this as much as she did. When they finally arrived at the house, a sprawling estate that belonged to his family, he turned to her, his expression serious. "Evelyn," he began, his voice low. "I know this isn't conventional. But I want you to know that I'm here for you. Whatever you need." She stared at him, her heart pounding in her chest. There was something in his eyes, something genuine, that made her want to believe him. But she couldn't. Not yet. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, his gaze lingering on hers for a moment longer before he turned away. "Come on," he said, opening the car door. "Let's go inside." She followed him up the steps to the front door, her mind racing. This was it. The beginning of the end. Or maybe, the beginning of something else entirely. As they stepped inside, he turned to her, his expression unreadable once more. "Welcome home," he said softly. She forced a smile, though it felt brittle on her lips. "Home," she echoed, the word tasting strange on her tongue. He reached out, his fingers brushing against hers again, and for a moment, she thought he might say something more. But instead, he simply nodded and turned away, leaving her standing there in the foyer, her heart pounding in her chest. What had she gotten herself into? The grand bedroom was bathed in the soft glow of moonlight filtering through sheer curtains, casting a silvery hue over the room. Evelyn stood near the window, her fingers tracing the edge of the velvet drapes as she tried to steady her breathing. The air felt thick, charged with an unspoken tension that made her skin prickle. She could hear Liam's footsteps behind her, slow and deliberate, each one echoing in the vast space. "Evelyn," he said, his voice low and smooth, like velvet brushing against her senses. She turned to face him, her dark hair catching the light as it cascaded over her shoulders. His piercing blue eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, she felt as though he could see straight through her, through the carefully constructed walls she had built around herself. "Liam," she replied, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. She crossed her arms over her chest, a subtle barrier between them. "This is strange, isn't it? Being here, like this." He took a step closer, his presence filling the room. "Strange?" he repeated, a faint smile playing on his lips. "I suppose it is. But then again, we've always been good at defying expectations, haven't we?" She couldn't help but laugh softly, though it lacked any real humor. "I suppose we have." Her gaze drifted to the bed, its pristine white sheets a stark reminder of the vows they had exchanged just hours ago. The weight of those words pressed down on her, a heavy reminder of the game she was playing, and the stakes involved. Liam followed her gaze, his expression thoughtful. "You're nervous," he observed, his tone gentle but probing. "Aren't you?" she shot back, her eyes flicking back to his. There was a challenge in her voice, a defiance that masked the vulnerability she refused to show. He chuckled, the sound warm and rich. "Maybe a little. But I think that's part of what makes this interesting." He closed the distance between them, his hand reaching out to brush a strand of hair from her face. His touch was light, almost tentative, but it sent a shiver down her spine nonetheless. Evelyn's breath caught for a moment, but she quickly regained her composure. "Interesting," she echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is that what you call it?" His fingers lingered near her cheek, his thumb grazing her skin in a way that made her pulse quicken. "What would you call it?" he asked, his voice dropping to a murmur. She hesitated, her mind racing. What would she call it? A mistake? A calculated risk? A means to an end? The truth was too complicated to put into words, so she settled for evasion. "I don't know," she admitted, her gaze dropping to the floor. Liam tilted her chin up gently, forcing her to meet his eyes again. "You don't have to have all the answers right now," he said softly. We have time. Time. The word echoed in her mind, a reminder of the commitment they had made, a commitment she wasn't sure she could keep. But before she could respond, his lips brushed against her forehead in a kiss so tender it nearly undid her. Her eyes fluttered closed, and for a moment, she allowed herself to lean into the warmth of his touch. When he pulled back, she opened her eyes to find him watching her intently, his expression unreadable. "You're beautiful," he murmured, his voice thick with something she couldn't quite place. Her cheeks flushed at the compliment, but she quickly masked it with a wry smile. "Flattery won't get you anywhere, Liam." "It's not flattery if it's true," he countered, his hand sliding down to rest on her waist. His touch was firm but gentle, grounding her in the moment. "And I meant what I said earlier. I want this to be real." Her heart skipped a beat at his words, but she forced herself to stay composed. "Real," she repeated, testing the word on her tongue. "And what does real look like to you?" He hesitated, his gaze searching hers as if trying to decipher her thoughts. "It looks like trust," he said finally. "Like honesty. Like letting someone in, even when it's hard." Evelyn's chest tightened at his words, a pang of guilt twisting in her gut. Honesty. That was the one thing she couldn't give him, not yet, maybe not ever. But before she could respond, his lips were on hers, soft and insistent, stealing her breath away. The kiss was slow and deliberate, a quiet exploration that left her dizzy with conflicting emotions. Her hands found their way to his chest, fingers curling into the fabric of his shirt as she kissed him back, her resolve wavering with every passing second. When they finally broke apart, Liam rested his forehead against hers, his breathing uneven. "We'll figure this out," he whispered, his voice filled with a quiet determination that made her heart ache. Evelyn swallowed hard, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. Would they figure it out? Or was she setting them both up for heartbreak? She didn't have the answers, but as Liam's arms wrapped around her, pulling her close, she couldn't bring herself to pull away. For now, she would let herself believe in the illusion, if only for a little while.